This is not a warning about what might happen next week. This is not a forecast for some distant, uncertain future outbreak. This is a live, active, escalating severe weather emergency happening right now, today, across the central United States, and the National Weather Service has already issued language that should stop every person in the affected region cold. Numerous tornadoes are expected. Multiple long-track EF3 or stronger tornadoes appear likely. A multi-day, potentially historic heavy rainfall event may produce catastrophic and life-threatening flooding. Those words are not from a doom scenario forecast. They are from the official NWS weather bulletin issued this morning. And if you are anywhere from the lower Mississippi Valley to the Ohio River Valley, what is already a dangerous situation is about to get dramatically, measurably worse. To understand the full weight of what is unfolding right now, you have to understand that today is not the beginning of this outbreak. It is the peak, and it arrived on top of a week of destruction that has already carved a path of damage across the southern and central United States, from Oklahoma to North Texas to Illinois, leaving behind destroyed homes, injured families, a shuttered military base, and communities still clearing debris when the next wave of storms is already forming overhead. Let us go back to where the sequence started, because this is a story that has been building for days, and each chapter has been worse than the one before it. On April 23rd, the first major event of what has now become a multi-day outbreak struck Enid, Oklahoma. At 8:22 in the evening, the National Weather Service issued a tornado emergency, the highest and most urgent alert level in the warning system, as a confirmed large and destructive tornado bore down on the city. That tornado was on the ground for 9 miles. It packed winds estimated at 170 to 175 miles per hour and measured 500 yards wide at its widest point. When damage survey teams assessed the aftermath, they rated it an EF4, the second highest category on the enhanced Fujita scale and the strongest tornado recorded anywhere in the United States since June 2025. In Enid's Gray Ridge neighborhood, the city's south side, homes were not merely damaged, they were demolished. Commercial buildings south of the city were reduced to piles of twisted metal and splintered wood. Structures were shoved completely off their foundations. Residents were trapped in their own homes by surrounding debris and had to be rescued by police and fire departments working through the darkness. At least 10 people were injured. Nearby Vance Air Force Base, one of the U.S. military's primary pilot training facilities, took a direct hit, forcing it to close due to power and water outages. The base measured a 107 mile-per-hour wind gust during the storm's passage. It was the first EF4 tornado in Garfield County, Oklahoma, since 1991. That was the opening act. There's a number that captures the raw scale of what happened between April 22 and April 27th. More than 50 tornado reports confirmed across the plains, the South, and the Midwest in just 5 days. 50 tornadoes, multiple fatalities. An EF4 striking a city of 50,000 and shutting down a United States Air Force base. Twin simultaneous tornadoes spotted near Foraker, Oklahoma, on Sunday evening. Particularly dangerous situation warnings issued across multiple states over multiple consecutive days. And now, on Monday, a corridor of tens of millions of people is being told by the federal government's own weather forecasters to expect numerous tornadoes, to expect potentially violent long-track EF3 or stronger storms, and to be prepared for potentially historic catastrophic flooding in the days that follow. This is not a single storm. This is a prolonged siege of severe weather that has been intensifying with every passing day. And today is the day that the people who study the atmosphere for a living are telling us it may reach its most dangerous phase yet. The atmosphere over the central United States right now is carrying levels of instability, moisture, and wind shear that forecasters describe as deeply concerning even by the standards of an already hyperactive season. The CAPE values, convective available potential energy, the measure of how much energy is available to fuel storm development, are elevated across the entire outbreak corridor. The dew points across southern Illinois and Missouri are running exceptionally high for late April, feeding enormous amounts of latent heat energy into the atmosphere that storms will be able to tap as they develop and intensify. The wind shear profiles, particularly the low-level shear that is most directly linked to tornado production, are among the strongest observed in any outbreak event so far in 2026. When these ingredients come together with a well-defined forcing mechanism like Monday's potent shortwave energy pulse moving across the region, the result is the kind of setup that ends up in severe weather textbooks. On April 25th, severe thunderstorms brought giant hail and damaging winds across the southern plains, with intense supercells tracking across the region and producing hailstones measuring 2 to 4 inches in diameter. On April 26th, twin tornadoes were observed simultaneously in a rural area near Foraker, Oklahoma, a phenomenon that signals extreme atmospheric instability and the kind of explosive convective environment that meteorologists watch with serious concern. Multiple particularly dangerous situation tornado warnings were issued across the region that evening, a designation reserved for situations where forecasters have high confidence that long-track, violent tornadoes are occurring or imminent. Sunday also brought the outbreak's first confirmed fatalities. Overnight, severe storms struck Runaway Bay, Texas, about 80 miles northwest of Dallas. An EF2 tornado tore through the area, killing at least 2 people, injuring others, and displacing 20 families. A disaster declaration was issued. The storm that had been building all week had just turned deadly. And by Sunday night, meteorologists were already issuing some of the most serious advance warning language seen in the 2026 severe weather season, because Monday, April 27th, was shaping up to be the most dangerous day yet. The Storm Prediction Center issued a CIG2 signal for Illinois heading into Monday. The CIG2, Convective Intensity Guidance Level 2, is one of the most serious designations in the entire severe weather forecasting toolkit. It is not issued routinely. It is not issued for borderline events. It is reserved specifically for atmospheric setups where violent, long-track tornadoes are considered a serious and credible possibility, not a remote outside chance, not a low probability scenario, but a corridor was calculated at 62.1%, one of the highest probability signals possible at any forecast range. Meteorologists themselves are describing as its most dangerous phase yet. Widespread. Damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes are threatening nearly 40 million people across a broader zone from the Mississippi Valley into the lower Ohio Valley. More than 55 million Americans across the Midwest and Mississippi Valley are in the total threat zone as this localized severe weather event. It is a description of a regional emergency. Tornado impacts in a typical season. The Level 3 Enhanced Risk Zone covers nearly all of Illinois, including urban and suburban areas and portions of Missouri, western Indiana, western Kentucky, and northwestern Tennessee. St. Louis is in the threat zone. Chicago is in a Level 2 risk area. Indianapolis and Memphis are in the Level 2 risk zone as well. When a significant tornado or line of destructive storms tracks through a major metropolitan area, the consequences, so in terms of lives at risk, infrastructure damage, and economic impact, are dramatically amplified compared to the same storm passing through open farmland. The density of population, the complexity of infrastructure, and the sheer number of people who need to receive and act on warnings simultaneously makes urban tornado events among the most challenging scenarios in emergency management. And Monday's atmosphere does not care about city limits. The specific geographic corridor drawing the most serious concern runs through central and southern Missouri and into central Illinois. This is the zone where the Storm Prediction Center's own forecasters say the most favorable environment for the strongest storms exists on Monday. The atmospheric setup that is driving this, a potent shortwave energy pulse moving across the mid-Mississippi Valley into the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes, combined with a surface low deepening and tracking east-northeast into northern Missouri and southern Iowa, with an attendant cold front pressing south and east, is the textbook definition of a classic severe weather configuration. The surface low is pulling warm, moist air northward from the Gulf of Mexico in a strong, low-level jet stream. That moisture is colliding with the cold, dry air mass behind the advancing front. The wind shear profiles, the change in wind speed and direction with altitude that allows thunderstorm updrafts to rotate, are described by the SPC as impressive across the entire region. Mid-level lapse rates of 8.5 to 9 degrees Celsius per kilometer have been observed, indicating extreme atmospheric instability. This is the kind of environment that produces long-track supercells, capable of staying on the ground for miles and growing in intensity rather than weakening as they move. The Storm Prediction Center is specifically warning about 2 distinct phases to Monday's event, and this 2-phase structure is part of what makes today particularly dangerous. The first phase involves discrete supercell thunderstorms developing Monday afternoon, likely initially, forming along and ahead of the cold front and in the vicinity of the warm front that is lifting northward. These supercells are the storms most capable of producing the violent, long-track tornadoes that the CIG2 signal is warning about. Discrete supercells, individual, organized storm cells with well-defined rotating updrafts, are the most tornado-productive storm type that exists in the atmosphere. When the environment supports them, they are capable of producing EF3, EF4, and in extreme cases, EF5 tornadoes that stay on the ground for tens of miles. As the afternoon progresses into evening, the SPC warns that the storm mode may evolve, with individual supercells potentially merging and organizing into a squall line. A squall line is a different kind of threat. It is less focused in terms of its tornado potential, but it can produce widespread damaging straight-line winds across an enormous geographic footprint. As that line charges through Monday night, embedded circulations within the line will continue to pose a tornado risk, even as the primary threat shifts more toward destructive wind events. The Tennessee Valley and Ohio River Valley are specifically called out as areas that could see a dangerous wind threat as this evolution occurs through the late evening and overnight hours. The National Weather Service language issued this morning added another dimension to today's threat that goes beyond tornadoes and wind. A multi-day, potentially historic heavy rainfall event may produce catastrophic and life-threatening flooding from the Ozarks into the Ohio River Valley through Saturday. That timeline, through Saturday, makes clear that even after Monday's most acute tornado and wind threat has passed, the crisis is not over. The same atmospheric pattern that is fueling today's severe weather is also setting up a prolonged, multi-day rainfall event that could inundate river basins, already running at elevated levels after weeks of repeated storm systems. Catastrophic. Flooding is a different kind of killer than tornadoes. It is slower, wider in geographic scope, and historically responsible for more annual weather-related deaths in the United States than tornadoes themselves. When the NWS uses the word catastrophic, it is not doing so casually. This matters even more given what communities across the affected region have already been through in the past 2 weeks. Some of the areas now facing Monday's threat, parts of Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, and the broader Mississippi Valley, have been hit repeatedly since early April. The National Weather Service Forecast Office in Chicago documented that by April 19th, its forecast area had already experienced 11 severe weather events and issued a record 128 severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings, a number that had never been reached that early in a calendar year in the office's history. The lower Great Lakes region, the corridor from eastern Iowa into southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois, had been described by forecasters as remarkably active hotspots. Communities that have already dealt with damaged infrastructure, downed power lines, and flooded roads are now being asked to shelter again, in some cases within days of the previous event. The National Weather Service has used a phrase in its Monday Outlook that demands specific attention: the possibility of a few potentially violent EF3 or stronger tornadoes during the initial supercell phase of the event. In the language of the NWS, the word violent is not used lightly. It is a technical designation for tornadoes rated EF3 or above, storms with winds exceeding 136 miles per hour at EF3, above 166 miles per hour at EF4, and above 200 miles per hour at EF5. An EF3 tornado will destroy well-built homes. An EF4 will level them and throw cars hundreds of yards. An EF5 will leave a concrete foundation scraped bare. The fact that the Storm Prediction Center is specifically warning about this category of tornado and has issued the CIG2 signal to underscore that the warning is not hedged means that anyone in the enhanced risk zone today needs to understand that the potential outcome is not a broken fence and some fallen trees. The potential outcome, if these storms develop as forecast and track through populated areas, is catastrophic. The warning system that has been at the center of this outbreak is doing what it is designed to do. The Storm Prediction Center began flagging elevated severe weather, potential days in advance of Monday's event. Local NWS offices have been issuing watches and warnings in a timely fashion. The CIG2 signal was communicated publicly and clearly, and the use of tornado emergency designations, which signal confirmed life-threatening tornadoes already on the ground, has given residents in the direct path of the most violent storms those critical final minutes to get underground. These systems have already saved lives in the April 17th outbreak, where 80 tornadoes produced 0 deaths, and in Enid on April 23rd, where an EF4 with 175 mile-per-hour winds killed nobody despite leveling dozens of homes. But the warning system is only as effective as the public's response to it. And in a season where communities have been told to shelter repeatedly, where tornado watches have become so frequent that some residents may be at risk of developing what emergency managers call warning fatigue, the danger of underreacting to today's threat is real and serious. The CIG2 signal for Illinois is not routine. The 62.1% severe weather probability for the outbreak corridor is not routine. The NWS language about numerous tornadoes and multiple long-track EF3 or stronger tornadoes is not routine. These are signals from the scientific community that Monday, April 27th, 2026, is shaping up to be one of the most significant severe weather days of the year, and possibly one of the most significant in recent memory for the regions in the direct path. Beyond the immediate threat of today's storms, this outbreak sequence is raising larger questions about the trajectory of severe weather in the United States and about the resilience of the communities most frequently in its path. The 2026 season came in front-loaded and violent. March was described as very above average, driven by 3 major outbreaks. April has been described as extremely active, with the April 17 to 18 outbreak and the ongoing April 22 to 27 sequence, combining to produce more tornado reports, more EF3, more stronger tornadoes, and more communities under active threat simultaneously than any comparable April stretch in years. The analog years that seasonal forecasters pointed to heading into 2026, 2023, 2009, 2001, 1985, 1976 were years characterized by front-loaded severe weather activity weighted toward spring. So far, 2026 is tracking that pattern with unsettling accuracy. The communities in Monday's path are not abstractions on a forecast map. They are cities and towns where people are right now watching the radar, following the watches and warnings, making decisions about whether to go to work, whether to pick up their children early from school, whether to move vehicles to safer locations, whether to check on elderly neighbors who may not be monitoring the forecast closely. Those decisions matter. In severe weather, the gap between a good outcome and a catastrophic one is often measured in minutes and in the choices made in those minutes. The storm is active. The outbreak is not finished. The worst of today may still be hours away. And the flooding threat that follows behind the tornadoes could persist into next week. If you are in the Mississippi Valley, the Ohio Valley, or central Illinois right now, know your shelter plan. Know where the lowest level of the sturdiest building near you is located. Have a way to receive warnings that does not depend on the power staying on. And when that warning comes today, do not wait. This storm is getting worse. The data says so, the forecasters say so, and the atmosphere is not done proving it.